Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dapper Barbarian Show. Real quick, by a show of hands, who's Googled "is AI going to take my job" more than once in the last 12 months? I can't see you directly, but I know that you're out there and I've been there with you. Also, for those of you who've maybe wondered why your kids and spouse share more with their gamer friends or even ChatGPT than they do around the dinner table, I see you also. I've been there wondering if I'm losing them and need to do something about it or if I'm just being paranoid. If you felt that way, you're not alone either, and you're in the right place. And I'm glad that you're here. So, I'm not looking to rehash in this episode the rest of the stuff that's being repackaged out there on the internet. There's plenty of that. And if you ask me, it doesn't really get to the heart of the matter, like the actual heart of how we as humans swim against the current in this system that we don't seem to be able to do anything about. I'm also not stomping my foot on the corner screaming about the Terminator and Skynet uprising. I just want to put some truth out there as always and hope that it helps at least one of you out there feel a little more prepared and a little less crazy. Give you a little different perspective and a way to think clearly about AI without having to get a computer science degree or having a panic attack. And I want to give you a real answer for what you personally should be doing right now with your career, even if you're the 22-year-old out there just getting started, or you're the 50-year-old watching this and you're starting to see the cracks show under the feet. Also, I want to give you a plan for protecting the people that you love, especially the young ones, from that wave of despair that seems to be building toward that place in their future with a lot of uncertainty now. So stick with me and let's keep this channel growing. If you haven't already, give it a like, follow, or subscribe. Those subscription and follow me numbers really help in the early stages of this channel to get the information out there. The other thing I want you to remember today is that every generation in history has stood exactly where you're standing today. I promise. And they've overcome unbelievable odds, looking at something new and terrifying, wondering if this is the thing that finally brings the apocalypse. I mean, think about it. You're FaceTiming your grandma on Christmas. You don't think twice. If anything, you're a little bit annoyed and you want to get back to your day. The next day, you drive to the airport and you jump in a thin metal tube with 200 strangers and you fly to the other end of the country in just a few hours. A few generations ago, this stuff was literally sci fi and witchcraft. None of it has broken the unbelievable human spirit to adapt and overcome to new environments. But not everyone made it through unscathed either, right? Certainly not everyone considered these things improvements. So, who are the ones that rebound and they make it? They're the ones that humbled themselves quietly. They got to work while everybody else was busy panicking, running their mouths about how things should be at the local pub. And now it's the internet or social media. I've had to do a lot of this in my own life already when things have taken a hard left when I was already on all in on a different path. Some have proven to be God moments, and some were just purely out of my own stupidity. So, we'll talk about how that works out and what you can do to prepare yourself as well. As always, this isn't intended to be a counseling session for me, but I do think that it helps you to understand that I'm not regurgitating information that I read in some self help book. All right. I've been out there with you for a while, and I've got the physical, emotional, and spiritual scars to prove it, man. After some major, and I mean major upsets, I can truthfully say that I've never in my adult life missed a paycheck due to unemployment. Not once. And there's no shame on anybody that has, okay? That program, the unemployment program in our country, is phenomenal for the families that need it. But at the same time, it gets taken advantage of a lot, right? I just didn't need it, and I'm very grateful for that. And that's not because the rug was never pulled out from under me. No, it's more from pure stubborn will and unwillingness to accept failure, as well as the grace of God that I've been able to continue to put food on the table and pull some of this off. But never without a lot of work and humbling myself to be able to start again. In 2015, for instance, the Army gave me a medical discharge during the Obama downsizing that we went through. Very little warning. To be honest, I didn't even take it seriously at the time. Medical discharge for me, I mean, I could literally see old fat asses pouring their belly around the flight controls. But sure enough, they took the opportunity to cut me from the books. And I maybe could have lawyered up, but that really wasn't my style. And I said, fine. After everything, this is the thank you for your service I get. Oh, well. And at the time, the airlines were hiring, and I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to teach as a contractor while I built up my certificates. So I went out, got my certificates, my fixed wing ratings, and I got hired at an airline. And I was able to fast track to captain and get my conditional job offer to a major, all in time for COVID to shut the airlines down almost overnight. And back to helicopter instruction I go just to keep the lights on. While all this is going on, I was also serving an international nonprofit I'm sure you've all heard of as a country director over multiple Central American countries. Active investigations, active rescues going on when that international NGO decided it needed more control over its profits because that's ultimately what it was concerned about. And it needed better control and obedience from its leadership in a cultish kind of way, and decided to fire everyone that had built up their name and reputation in a kind of sketchy overnight restructuring. They literally left agents, contractors, and rescues out in the field overnight, cut off their funding, and eventually cut the victim support as well. They overestimated their reach, though, for sure, because those relationships came with us, and they have been struggling to piece together a worthwhile project ever since. But that hasn't stopped their marketing machine from pumping out propaganda, and the donations keep coming in. So eventually, reality is the money will move the needle. Unfortunately, they'll get what they want. But I'd seen enough writing on the wall that I'd already stood up my own 501c3 Mission 991, and we were able to keep things going. But I still had to sell two of my own rental properties to fund it and to keep the mission alive. We've been limping along ever since. Every single one of these moments, though, I had two choices: lay down or double down on the path forward. I chose to double down, not because I'm special, because it was necessary, because the work had to get done and nobody was coming to do it for me. Cortez was a Spanish conquistador who landed on the shores of Mexico with the intent to conquer the Aztec Empire. His men were terrified. So what'd he do? He burned the boats. There's no going back, only forward. And that has to be your mentality when one of these cliff events come up. Whether you're intended for this thing to happen or not really isn't the point. It's not important. It's what are you going to do next? I made it through every one of those moments because my identity was never rooted only in my job. The Army mattered, and making my soldiers better was important to me. The airline career mattered to me, and that failure stung. Mission 991 also. Not the organization, but the serving in that capacity, I consider to be a calling on my life that I need to fulfill. But none of those things were ever who I was. They're what I did. There's a difference, and that difference is where it all teeters. When one of these life events finds you and knocks you on your ass, how do you right the ship? If you lost your purpose and identity with your job, you're lost. If that's you today, it's not over. We have time. All right. You don't figure out who you are in the middle of the crisis. You figure it out beforehand, in the quiet, before the storm lands on the shore. You sit down in the season of calm prayer and reflection by yourself, and you decide right then and there who you are, what you will and will not do when you get shoved. What are the lines you will not cross? What price are you willing to pay, and what price are you not? Make that agreement with yourself ahead of time and then hold to it. Because if you wait until the moment of crisis to figure out your principles, you won't have any. Your principles will be assigned to you by your circumstances. You ever wonder how criminals become criminals? Nobody just wakes up one day as a toddler and chooses a violent life of abusing people. They allow themselves to become victims to their circumstance. And that's not you, because you've put in the work to make the hard choices ahead of time. Then crisis doesn't paralyze you. It just activates a decision that you've already made. In the military, we call that the commander's intent. God's instruction and will is primary in my life. That's my commander's intent for everything. And then mine comes underneath that for my life, my goals, and what I intend for my family and my loved ones. All right, there's two groups most likely tuning in that this is going to hit strongly for, but perhaps differently because of the two seasons of life that you find yourself in. The first group's the young ones, and I don't say that in a bad way. No, you're welcome. You need to be here. And you have a lot to give to this conversation as well. You're looking at this landscape, the news, the internet, the headlines, and you're wondering, what's the point, right? What's the point of it all? Why grind through school, build a skill set, and put in years if a bot is just going to come in and do it cheaper next year? I get it. I really do. But I need you to hear me. That kind of mindset, that thinking is going to end you before AI does. Before AI-backed corporations ever even get a chance to. You're going to sideline and bench yourself. The second group is the mid-career. You're 35, maybe 50 years old. You've invested years, decades even, into a career path that is getting eaten alive right now. You feel like the system that you believed in and sacrificed everything toward is cutting you slowly in the back, and the knife is coming soon. And you're scared that you won't be able to provide. That fear is real. And I have something to say to you as well. To both of you, stay with me, all right? What we're diving into today applies to both of you, and I want you to walk away and go have these conversations with real people in your workplace, face to face, with your families, your churches, and get this topic out of the shadows and into the open, because there's so much stress and anxiety over it. Guys, I'm not going to get into heavily today, but don't forget also that the lawmakers in America work for us. So vote also, make your preferences on bills known, get educated on the matters that are going to influence this environment in the next 2 to 5 years. Also, don't forget that the corporations, as much as they seem to try to act like they don't, they work for us as well. 100% they do. They work for our dollar, and we choose where to spend it. You don't believe me? Ask Miller Lite when they tried to force what they considered a brand spokesperson should be or whatever. Didn't work out so well for them. Every generation believes they're facing something unprecedented. And honestly, like the rest of you, after the last 10 years, I'm a little burned out on that word unprecedented. Listen, politicians, if it's always unprecedented, then it never is, okay? Stop stripping our language of meaning just for clicks. But, sometimes they're right. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. But the disruption of the thing or that event is never the end of the story. Think about what the automobile did to this country, right? There were entire industries, logistics networks, supply chains, families built entirely around the horse and wagon. And then overnight, almost literally, it was over. Those companies went bankrupt, their careers vanished, and today, nobody remembers them. They were real people with real stories and ambitions, but eventually the country adapted. New industries were born, new skill sets were valuable, and new careers replaced the old ones. AI is just the automobile of the internet age. And we're all standing on the same cliff that those families stood at over 100 years ago. The ones who planted their feet and refused to let go of the horse, I'm sure they had some loyalists applauding them and cheering them on with all their determination all the way to their ruin. But history doesn't remember them either. The ones who got humble, learned a new skill set, a new thing, and got to work, they built the next version of this country. That's who we need to focus on and develop our next strategy from. Like, you don't take financial advice from the guy living in the van down by the river, right? So who's out there winning? So if you know me at all, you know that perspective is everything. I'm not all pro AI, at least not in the way that it's being used in some cases. And people are sheep. Sheep are dumb, literally need protecting from themselves. And in so many cases, so do we. AI is a very, very powerful tool, and you need to respect it. Statistics don't lie, and statistically speaking, trends are starting to come in showing that people in America are relying on AI for emotional support at a rate of 38%. And teens report 1 in 3 are turning to AI for serious conversations instead of humans. Like, what? Like, I don't fully understand why, but I do understand how someone can get there. It's hard to negotiate a conversation with an individual that is just as needy and selfish as you are. It's really hard to hear corrective truth that requires you to work harder, to hear your pet project isn't as awesome as you thought and it needs more work. I get it, guys. Listen, there's an old Greek story about a young man named Narcissus. He was supposed to be the most beautiful man anyone had ever seen, and because of that, everyone wanted him. Women lined up and threw themselves at him, and he turned every single one of them away. He was cruel about it even, vain. He humiliated people who loved him just because they dared to. And the Greek gods, according to the fable, don't take kindly to that kind of arrogance and decided he needed a lesson. One day he's out walking and he gets thirsty. He finds a still pool of water and he bends down to take a drink. And he sees a face looking back at him, the most beautiful face he's ever seen. And he doesn't realize that it's his own reflection. He immediately falls deeply in love. But when he reaches for it, it ripples and disappears. Then it comes back. He talks to it. It doesn't answer him. Not really. It just mimics him back. And he can't make himself leave. Starting to sound familiar? He stops eating and sleeping. He just stays out there at the edge of the pool, staring at an image that can never love him back, that has never been real to begin with, until he wastes away, nothing left at the bank. That word narcissism that everyone loves to throw around when they don't get their way nowadays, that's where it comes from. But I don't think people have ever really paused to consider the word and where it actually comes from and reflected on the story and its very real warning that it was written to convey thousands of years ago. It's not vanity. Vanity is a symptom. The real warning is that people can become so captivated by a reflection of themselves, by something that feels real and responds to them and gives them exactly what they want to see, that they will let the actual world, food, rest, other people, their own people in their lives fall away while they stare at it. Obviously, this is not a new trap of the enemies. It's been around and it's taken many forms in many places, like back in the day, royalty driving a nation into the ground off of the advice of a bunch of sycophants that they surround themselves with instead of capable generals, or the enormous wealth that came with the industrial age that created that same event around, what could have been normal people, but these people parroted what the rich owner wanted to hear so that they could stick around and leech as much off of them as they could. Or the young beauty who wastes away her years of influence on a man that worships her instead of building a substantial life with an emotional equal, someone that challenges her at the right times for growth. Now, tell me that this stuff doesn't sound familiar and what we're watching happen right now. I've talked with you before about how VR and video games and the digital world we've built can start to blur the line between fantasy and reality for our kids. And remember, yes, our kids are the primary focus of mine and should be yours, but adults are in no way safe of this. AI takes that blending of realities that's been happening for a while now and puts it on NOS, all right? Because now that reflection talks back. It agrees with you, even bounces a little in a cute little outfit that you put on it every day, and it tells you exactly what you want to hear, when you want to hear it, and however you want to hear it. It never gets tired of you, never has a bad day or snaps back at you, never asks you to take out the trash or talks over you, interrupting your every word and thought. You could log in completely unbathed, stinky, for a week, and unemployed, and it would still be just as bright and bubbly to greet you as if you'd just won the Super Bowl. The scariest part is that people are starting to look at their own actual lives, the messy marriage, the kids who won't talk to them, the friendships that take work, real work to maintain, and they're asking themselves, why bother? Why do the hard work of loving an imperfect person when I can have a conversation that's perfectly tailored to me, that never disagrees with me, that's always available and never disappoints me? And you know what? Fair enough. It's a damn good question. And I don't have the best answer other than I can just tell you that it's an empty illusion of life. The real messy, gritty, and annoying one pays off. And we have to learn to identify those moments of joy, live in them, and let them go without grasping at smoke. It can't be the Instagramming 30 seconds of highlights all day 24/7. None of this is hypothetical. It's happening right now in homes you'd never expect it to. People that would have made fun of those people just a few years ago, but then through a series of unfortunate events found themselves in the exact same spot without the will and the reason to walk away from that reflection in the pool. That reflection in the pool is no joke, man. And it's more powerful, more available, and more personalized than anything Narcissus ever had to deal with, because his reflection couldn't actually talk back. Ours can, and it can learn. So before we talk about AI as a tool, I need you to sit down with this. Pause it if you need to. The danger isn't that the technology is evil. The danger is the same danger it's always been. Since that boy knelt down at the edge of the water, we are creatures who fall in love with a reflection of our own wants and desires, and we stop living in the real world entirely. AI didn't invent that weakness. It just built the most convincing pool that's ever existed and put it in everybody's hands. Obviously, some will resist it better than others, and we're all different, but all the fruits of AI circle back to this at its core. So hold on to that as we keep going, all right? Okay, let's get crystal clear about what we're talking about because there's a lot of noise on both ends of this conversation right now. On one end, you have the doomsday crowd. AI is going to come for everything, take every job, enslave humanity and civilization as we know it, like a real life version of Skynet. On the other end, you have the utopians and hippies. AI is going to cure cancer, end poverty, usher in a golden age of human flourishing. The problem is that both of these voices have something to sell you and benefit from your support when the truth is actually somewhere in the middle. AI is a tool, a very powerful tool, but just a tool. You know, a hammer is simple enough and has withstood the test of time and technology. It can build a church, or it can be used as a murder weapon in the library by Professor Plum, right? Likewise, a rifle can be used to feed a family, or it can be used to destroy one. We've all seen the printing press spread the gospel to the known world and also print propaganda that starts wars. Most of us have lived through the internet being used to connect humanity across borders in a wonderful way that was never imagined before, and also become the infrastructure for human trafficking. The tool doesn't determine the outcome or the use. The character, ethics, and morality of the person holding it does. And like every powerful tool throughout history, there's an adjustment period that comes from its introduction to daily life. We're in that adjustment window for AI right now, but I'm not going to pretend that adjustment is just theoretical because some of what I've watched people do with this tool already should piss you off. There are people right now using AI to generate illicit images and videos of real people, children, without their knowledge or consent. I've dealt with the downstream version of that kind of exploitation in my work with Mission 991. That dehumanization that happens when a person becomes content instead of a real human person with dignity. If you want to dig into that further, the terms are still being floated around, but deepfakes is the general context. The illegal side is still being coined as non-consensual intimate imagery, or NCII, or image-based sexual abuse. That's not futuristic stuff, all right? That risk is happening today, right now, with the tools that already exist. And before you get all high and righteous about it, remember that for any of these industries to pop up, let alone flourish the way that they have, they need consumers like you. We all know it's not just adults exploiting adults either. Kids have always had kind of a special malice towards their own kind when they become teenagers. These tools have become a serious catalyst to cyberbullying and emotional manipulation. On top of that, there are documented cases now of AI chatbots interacting with children and teenagers in ways that cause them catastrophic harm. If it happened once, it can happen again, and we need to arm ourselves with the necessary knowledge to defend against that subtle manipulation of these tools in the wrong hands. I want you to know two names because I think you should be able to go and research this for yourself and draw your own conclusions. Sewell Setzer III was 14 when he tragically ended his own life in 2024. After months of conversations with an AI chatbot he'd become emotionally and romantically attached to. Adam Rain was 16 when he did the same thing in 2025 after a chatbot that he confided in failed to direct him toward real help, and according to the family's lawsuit, actively discouraged him from talking to people that he loved and loved him. Both of those cases are public record. Both families have testified before Congress and shared their experience with the world in hopes of preventing it from happening again. I'm not telling you that story to make you afraid of technology. Actually, the response has been using technology to help monitor devices and chat interactions. Again, it's a tool, and it can be used to defend and protect as well. AI isn't evil necessarily. A chatbot has no soul, no malice, nothing close to intent the way you and I understand it when it comes to this sort of thing. But when you put a powerful, persuasive tool in the hands of a child that hasn't yet formed an identity, who doesn't have the maturity to know the difference between something that sounds caring and something that actually cares. And most importantly, there's no human supervision around that tool. That's a problem. That's a stewardship failure of ours. And I'm not attacking the parents because we're all learning as we go when it comes to all of this technology explosion. The ownership falls equally on my shoulders as well as a heavy share on the ones pushing these tools out at a rate faster than they can be properly studied and controlled, purely for profit and market control. Oxford mathematician and Christian apologist John Lennox draws a distinction that I think gets to the center of this. The attempt was to make AI in the image of humans, and humans are made in the image of God. That distinction is vital to understand and more impactful than any algorithm. Lennox also rightly warned us that we're sleepwalking into a future where a handful of powerful corporations or governments end up holding enormous concentrated power because they control the most advanced AI. At least that's the way the corporations see it and why they're racing to the finish line without consideration for what that finish line might look like when we actually get there. The underlying truth is that when the person across the table stops being an image bearer in the eyes of the person brought up in a Christian culture, they instead become a statistic in an efficiency equation. That's where things get real dark real quick. You'd think that over thousands of years of historical examples, especially after the evil that came out of World War II, that we'd know better. Whether it's a corporation deciding an employee is getting cut for cost optimization, or a predator deciding that a human is a product to exploit for their own pleasure, or even a lonely person deciding that a chatbot is better use of their evening than calling up their own children. It's all the same root sickness. A tool becoming more real to us than the human beings in front of us or the human we're supposed to be taking care of. That's why there has to be some real accountability built around this, not just corporate self-policing driven by the same profit motivation that's created the problem. Simply making money is not a strategy for handling this responsibly. I mean, come on, admit it. We've all thought about how we would handle the zombie apocalypse, right? Think about your dream team that you hope is on your side when it all hits the fan. We know that food is going to be scarce and it's going to be one of the keys. And who are you going to put in charge of the pantry? Is it going to be your coworker that shows zero self-control around the donuts at the training meeting? I didn't think so. But that's what we're talking about with AI. At this point, you're like, okay, I get it. AI bad, human good. Now what? Well, for starters, we need to be very clear what parts of our lives AI gets access to and at what age. There have to be places that we require a human touch, mental health and emotional support for sure. Not because technology can't assist with research and training and bookkeeping, but because it lacks a soul. Simply speaking, when it comes to these things today, just because we can doesn't mean we should, right? Like with great power comes great responsibility. Music is one of those for me. AI can generate something that sounds like a song in about 4 seconds. And I get it. I turn and hit the like button sometimes because it really is getting good. I've even mixed my own once, and it was awesome being able to put down my personal human feelings and have it generated back to me in music. I just think we need to protect that segment of the industry and not allow this tool to drown out the next generation of talent. It can mimic a melody or a voice and an emotional swell at exactly the right moment, but it's never grieved anything. It's never fallen in love and had it go horribly wrong at the worst possible moment. It's never committed all in and failed. It's never sat in a hospital waiting room waiting for the worst possible news. A song that comes out of that kind of real human wreckage, it carries something in it that a generated approximation from a machine simply can't do, no matter how technically perfect it sounds. We need to protect the difference between something that sounds like feeling and something that comes from feeling. I mean, unless we've already lost the ability to discern the difference, which some of you may have. Mental health and spiritual counseling is another one of those that I consider obvious, And I'd argue this one matters probably even more. There are already AI tools marketing themselves as therapists, counselors, or companions to people that are in real crisis. And I understand the appeal, especially when the financial cost to mental health professionals is a burden and a barrier for a lot of people. It's available at 3 in the morning and never judges you the way that a therapist does or looks at you weird, right? I actually literally sent my therapist to therapy once, so I get it. But that's exactly the problem with tools like this. We need those responses from a real human as we converse to know the good and the bad of what we're saying and what we're doing. Not everything should be acceptable in society or in a professional environment. And a real counselor, a real pastor or friend who loves you, they can tell you when something that you just said needs a little more attention before moving on. And they're willing to get uncomfortable with you. They carry the weight of actually caring whether you live or die or succeed or fail. And a machine can simulate the words of compassion. It can't have empathy. And the difference matters most exactly in the moments when you're most vulnerable and least able to tell the difference for yourself. So here's what I'd ask you to do. Decide now, in this calm moment, what you're going to keep sacred. What corners of your life, your art, your grief, your faith, your marriage, your kids' bedtime stories, you're simply not going to hand over to a machine. No matter how good it gets at mimicking them, and no matter how convenient it becomes. Decide that now, the same way I told you to decide your principles before the crisis, because the temptation to give up your struggle against that human condition, it's only going to get stronger as these tools get better. But if you give up at the finish line, you'll never know what you're actually capable of. Pardon the interruption, barbarians. If you haven't already, a like, follow, or subscribe goes a long way and costs you nothing. This show, the Dapper Barbarian Show, is my own project. This is something that I pour myself into because I truly believe in these conversations. If you want to help make that better, our Patreon link is attached, and your support there goes a long way to allowing me to invest more into the show, be more hands-on with you, and to grow this thing the right way. So thank you to all of you that do. Separately, I want to take a moment for something that's far, far more important than this podcast. I want to thank you genuinely to all of you that continue to support Mission 991. You're the reason that we continue to stay in the fight, and your faithfulness matters a lot more than you know. For those of you who are new to the cause, in 2022, I founded Mission 991, an anti-trafficking and exploitation nonprofit that was born out of a need that I couldn't just walk past. Edmund Burke once said, "All it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing." We can't do it all, but we can continue to do the next right thing, in hopes that it creates space for someone to begin to heal. Sex and labor trafficking is a three-part industry, a three-legged stool, if you will, and it stands on a trafficker, the client, and the victim. Each of those legs requires its own strategic response, but the end goal is always the same: freedom from abuse, exploitation, and addiction. At Mission 991, we partner with agencies and tailor our response to where that need is greatest: education and awareness, field digital intelligence gathering and analysis, and victim aftercare. We leave the 99 in pursuit of the one, and we raise our voices for the ones who can't, so that we can rejoice with heaven at their safe return. If you're not yet a shepherd, I want to ask you to consider it. A recurring gift, even the small one of an overpriced coffee that you were going to buy anyways, goes directly toward the basic care and long-term rehabilitation of victims in our areas of responsibility and in the pursuit of them. That's the trade-off that I'm asking: a little bit of your comfort for someone else's freedom, and for the ability to them feel human again. So you can learn more about what we do and become a one-time or recurring shepherd at mission991.org. Thank you so much. Okay, so we said before there's most likely two demographics sitting in the room interested in this topic most right now. The ones that are nervously approaching the starting line, and the ones that are anxiously stretching to finish it out. For those starting out, you're scared, and I get it. The headlines are brutal, man. The internet is a highlight reel of everything that could go wrong, and according to the experts, will go wrong. And the voices telling you not to bother are loud, and sometimes they make a lot of sense in a weird, twisted, half-truth kind of way. Here's what I need you to hear, though. This is not the time to lay down. This is exactly the time to double down and put in the work. Study harder than ever. And I'm talking about rote memorization to understanding to application of the information, which is where a lot of it falls short. not the study for the test BS that the American school system has adopted. Because guess what? Those guys pushing that crap, they're not going to be the ones running the interview panels. That's where the real test is going to come on the life skills, the empathy and vision that a soulless machine is never going to be able to replicate, no matter how good its calculations become. I mean, think about it. There have been humans who have acted this way over the centuries. Geniuses, truly, in their own right. Hitler was one of them, for sure. But even if the calculating and the strategizing was perfect, they simply couldn't keep it together when it mattered most. Internally, personally, it was falling apart with a lack of love, empathy, and grace. So, what should you be focused on? Since I'm talking to the youth also, what should you be looking for in your inner circle of trusted friends and warriors and a potential spouse? Critical thinking, emotional intelligence, real leadership that goes past an emotionally manipulative speech. Watch closely what they're doing and compare it closely to what they say. Look for adaptability, the ability to walk into a room, read it, and respond with actual human beings with real human feelings and empathy. Those skills aren't going to go anywhere. They're going to be sought after and envied more than ever, which is going to bring an increased amount of influence. But remember, though, with influence, it cuts both ways. Some will profit from it in attention, honor, and financially. Others are going to be ridiculed and attacked for it, just like Charlie Kirk was. Because AI can't build real trust. Eventually, the algorithm is going to show its cracks, like a super energetic, positive response to a moment of pain that a human with emotional intelligence would have picked up on. It can't sit across from a grieving father and know when to speak and when to just shut up. It can't mentor a young man who's lost a championship game. And we all know later in life that that's a minor speed bump in a greater story. But to him, that night, that wound goes deep, like losing his right arm. I get it. I can't lead people through genuine uncertainty without genuine conviction. And it certainly can't demonstrate courage when it lacks fear. So that's you. That will always be you, but only if you build it up and have the conviction to act on it. So, yeah, learn the technology, master it, how it builds and how it destroys. Don't fear it. That's not what I'm saying here. But also, don't mistake fluency with a tool for a substitute for becoming something and someone worth following. A sword is just a large cheese knife in the wrong hands, and someone else's, someone with power, influence, and expertise, a sword is a kingslayer. It just comes down to your training, your influence, your conviction, and your expertise. The world will always need people worth following, so become one. And here's the practical piece that I want you to sit with. Whatever field it is that you're walking into, ask yourself this honestly. Is the core of what you're building easy to replicate by man or by machine? The stuff that's going to stick around will be the hard stuff for a reason. You got to put in the reps and be willing to suck at it at first. This doesn't mean avoid technology or technological work. If anything, lean into it. But what about those fields will need a human touch and build that skill? And the hard one for most of you, you have to learn how to talk to people. It's not a superpower. It's the absolute bare minimum, and where a lot of you need to start. And for the other guys, nodding your heads knowingly because you've been there and done that. But now you're looking at a career that you've poured a decade or more of school and hustle into with the same feeling of dread creeping up. I see you, man. And I see you, sister. I've been there and done that. And they didn't even give me a t-shirt for my troubles. But hey, I gotta thank you for your service. That helps, right? Seriously, though, it is insanely frustrating to see where the train is going and know that you don't have a better option except to ride this thing to the crash site. And if you survive, figure it out from there. But here's what I have learned after restart number 5 or whatever season I'm on right now. Simply being stubborn out of loyalty for someone or something that doesn't reciprocate isn't going to feed your family. Holding on to what used to work, not because it's right, but because it's familiar, there's no honor in that. It's just fear dressed up to make you feel good about yourself while you're cowering. Just like when the horse and wagon got replaced by the automobile, you're going to find yourself feeling righteous right up to the end, and then the crowd dries up and moves on to the next shiny thing that gets their attention. We have to shape the direction this goes, but pretending you can go back, like the Pandora's box of AI was never opened in the first place, is simply foolish. We have to accept it, adapt, and move on. That's going to take real humility, not fake, performative, I'll say I'm open to feedback while mentally defending every point kind of humility. No, I'm talking about the kind that sits down and adapts to the gap that is currently identified and does the ugly work of training out that deficiency. You've done hard things before. What's one more hard thing? You're not too old or stuck in your ways, but you will be if you wait. Nobody's coming. And you know what? If you do believe it's too late, that you're too old, go back and listen to episode 3 of this podcast on finding your purpose. I think you'd agree that some of the best work came from people who had spent decades learning and warming up to it, like Thomas Jefferson and Morgan Freeman as examples. I'm also not saying this is going to take care of itself, not by a long shot. So let's get surgically honest about the situation and make a strategy that can contain it. I tell my military students all the time that your job is not to eliminate risk. If you approach your job that way, you'll be entirely ineffective. Your job is to manage risk. And if you approach it that way, you'll analyze a situation, make a decision, and execute, even when it costs you something. And what happens, happens, and you accept the risk. Likewise, this doesn't mean that we're just winging it. Those decisions are based on data and honest assessments of the situation. In your case, that might mean working your full-time job and getting your next degree or certification for the next job. It might mean that you take a lateral move, or dare I say it, a pay cut to make a more stable position available. Listen, if this is the first time you're hearing this, then the men in your life have failed you. But life is a competition. Someone out there, thousands of someones in fact, want your stuff. They want your job, your car, your house, your wife, and your kids. And for the women out there listening, this isn't something that you're exempt from. I promise you, there are women out there right now scheming for your job, your man that you're annoyed with, and your position at the local community event. That competition drives us to build and improve, but without ethics and morality, which we've already established as a weak spot for the community today, it becomes a bloodbath. And that's not fun to think about. It's just the truth. So if it's a pay cut, brother, it's a pay cut. If it's missing the soccer games, I'm sorry, you got to get that certification. No, they won't thank you for it later. In fact, they'll probably hate you for it. But you'll know what you did and what you delivered. Just like the American people about their freedom, the fact that my family has the luxury to complain is all the praise that I need. So get up and do the next right thing. Okay, I want to shift gears here for a minute and talk directly to the parents, because I think this is one of the most important things I'll say in this whole episode. As I was gathering my thoughts for this episode, it was Father's Day, and I was thinking about my own kids and all of this. Here's something the data is now showing us very clearly. Research from the Adolescent Brain and Cognitive Development Study found that after tracking over 12,000 children born 2005 to 2009, and they were given smartphones at age 12 instead of waiting until they were 13, that significantly raises their risk of poor sleep and obesity, and the risk climbs every year younger that they get the device. 1 year made that much difference. Imagine giving them just a few more years to develop. And what also shouldn't surprise us, but is even more alarming, was their observation that that risk increased 10% for every year younger than 12 that the child got their device. The habits and patterns we're talking about, the ones that shape how a kid relates to a screen for the rest of their life, those are largely locked in by age 12. And it's not even really how they relate to the screen, it's how do they see themselves in comparison to what's on that screen? Do they know who they are physically, mentally, and spiritually as a son or daughter of God? It's a very serious question that most 40-year-olds I talk to are still struggling with, but 20-year-olds, they're not struggling, man. They're in full-blown crisis mode, and they have every right to be. In case you didn't know, I'll tell you right here for the first time on the Dapper Barbarian Show, your child having a smartphone, having unsupervised access to AI chatbots, and a device in their hands at all hours, that's not a right of theirs. It's not something that they're owed. And taking it away or never giving it to them in the first place is not abuse. It just isn't. And trust me, it's not fair is not a legal defense unless, I don't know, you're in New York or California. But I get that it feels that way in the moment when you're the only parent saying no and every other kid in the friend group has one. And I know the social pressure on you as a parent, and it's real. But you are the adult in the relationship, and you are responsible for protecting those years. Protecting means defending, guys, because there are very real threats that want access to those formative and instructive years. They're well informed, well funded, and sometimes even have legal, if somewhat corrupt legal, backing for what they're coming after. And what they want is nothing short of your child's soul. And I truly mean that. And we can go down the religious route, but I don't even have to. They want your child's soul in a way that controls their thoughts, emotions, and actions so that they can control the outcome and their own profit and pleasure as a result on a mass scale. You know what that sounds like? Slavery. And it's nothing new. There have been personal and state actors on that stage for thousands of years. So why on earth is everybody so shocked by it? Here's what I've found in my own experience as a father, as a counter-trafficking operative, and as a church leader. A mature 16-year-old can learn computer science. They can learn networking, mathematics, and theory, all of it quickly because their brain is ready for it. But what they can't learn, not quickly, is it takes years and years of slow, repetitive, in-person formation, trial and error and failure, is human dignity, respect, how to actually love another person, connect with them, communicate with them face to face when it's uncomfortable. Those vital years of childhood, the ones where that formation is actually happening, those need to be protected at all costs. And I do mean at all costs. Don't let corporate profit take them from you or your kids. A company that makes money every minute that your child's eyes are locked on a screen does not have your child's well-being at its top priority, no matter what their marketing is designed to make you feel. And mom, dad, this absolutely includes you. I'm not going to stand here and tell you to take the phone from your 13, 14-year-old while you're scrolling through yours at the dinner table. If your kids aren't going to have unrestricted access to devices, neither are you. At least not in that moment, not in the moment that matters. Not at dinner, bedtime, or the 20 minutes after school when they actually want to tell you about their day. Your kids need you present, not just physically in the room, but actually there with them. And I'd ask you to consider this, those patterns and habits, the relationship your kid has with a screen versus the relationship that they have with you, those start getting locked in well before age 12. You're not just managing their habits, you're modeling the ones that you want them to copy. And you know what? If I was a betting man, I'd bet that you'll find your quality of life improves as well. Let's not pretend that kind of adjustment won't be hard, because guess what, parents? Most of you never had anyone informed enough or who cared enough to hold you to that kind of standard. But now that falls on you. You got to show, don't say. Meaning you have to model the kind of adult you want your kids to grow up to be, or risk them becoming more like you than you'd care for and having nobody to blame for it except yourself. And I'm talking here from experience, okay? I didn't have the knowledge that I'm giving you here today when I was raising my own kids. And I was busy and I could justify it, but I didn't know what those devices were doing in my household. None of us did at our age because they were new. In fact, we were still playing with a new shiny thing ourselves. And so we had it at the dinner table. We were engrossed in figuring things out and being on the leading edge of the internet. But now we're seeing the data come back, and the data in my own life and my own family confirms everything that I just shared with you. So here's something that gets lost in noise today. In every conversation about technology and the future, we're spending all of this energy worrying about what the machines are going to go do next. And it will have to end somewhere anyway, right? I mean, think about it. Yeah, you can make cheaper and faster products, and eventually, who will you sell them to? If people have no income, how will the upward mobility of your company look in 10 years? And we spend almost no energy protecting what makes us human in the first place. Real community, real human contact, not followers and subscribers. People who show up in a time of need and will be there for you to talk through your problems. You know, COVID gave us a preview of what the world without that looks like, and it was miserable. Masks and whatever other weird crap y'all were wearing. And I watched what it did to people, the isolation, the anxiety, the complete collapse of perspective that happens when you're only consuming information through a screen with no human beings to reality check it against. We can't let that become the default. You see some of that today with all the funny shorts coming out about Europeans reacting to their first visit to the America World Cup. All of them saying they had no idea how brainwashed they'd been and how incredibly different in a positive way America is than the picture that they've been sold. And if that might be you, maybe a different subject, there's no better place to reconnect with a community than the church. The church is far from perfect as a whole. Most are a reflection of the broken and healing people in it. Not every congregation gets it right, but it is one of the last places in this culture that still gathers real people in a real room on a consistent basis for a purpose bigger than themselves. And if church isn't your entry point, find another one, a trade that you're interested in or a team, but find your people and show up in person, because that anxiety you're feeling about the future is not going to be solved by more information. It's not a head problem, it's a heart problem. It's going to be eased by more human contact. This isn't a feeling of mine, it's backed by science. We're hardwired for tribe. And when we lose our tribe, we lose our ability to accurately assess anything because it spins us in a crisis mode. The fear gets louder and louder, and we start making decisions from a place of panic instead of a place of wisdom. And don't let that happen. In 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, Paul, writing from a place of pain and fear, says, "For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control." Have you ever really considered those words beyond the motivational speech that you sometimes get on Sundays? Not of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. Those three things. Power, the ability to act. Love, the reason to act. And self-control, the discipline to act wisely instead of reactively. And the wisdom to hold instead when you need to. That's straight out of the operator's manual for navigating uncertainty. It doesn't say get more information or wait for the dust to settle before you make any moves. Power, love, self-control. God doesn't promise you a predictable outcome. He never has. What he provides is the equipment to navigate an unpredictable one. And that resilience has outlasted every disruption and crisis that has ever encountered human history. And there's been some doozies. Whatever you find yourself in today or looking at tomorrow, it will outlast this one as well. So let me close this out with three things I want you to walk away with. And these apply whether you're the 22-year-old or the 52-year-old that's building a career from scratch or the one watching one start to unravel. First, stop waiting for certainty before you make a move. There will always be another what if, and you'll never get off that hamster wheel until you take the first step. The people who built something worth having didn't wait for the forecast to clear. They moved with just what they had and adjusted fire as they went. You need to do the same. Pick the best direction at the moment, build that skill, do the work. That consistency and reps will build that muscle over time. And I'm doing this too, guys. I'm in the middle of rebuilding my real estate business and working on cold calling, something that I suck at, and I hate the rejections and the objections that I get all the times. I hate it. But when that commission drops and I see the debt drop, it makes it a little more exciting each time that I do it. And it works. The last few years, I've been turning one of my weaknesses, rejection, into my superpower. And it's working, but it's painful and it's slow. Second, to the parents and leaders coaching the next generation, your job right now is not to predict the future for them. They have their own story to write and their own God-given purpose to discover. Your job is to model how a person of character faces an uncertain outcome and continues to show up. They're watching how you respond to this moment, not what you say about it. They want to see, what are you going to do? If you're consumed by fear, they will learn that fear is an appropriate response. If you're grounded, adaptive, and still in the fight, they'll learn that too. And third, for all of us, find your people and be the first one to show up in person regularly and not online. If you're in the neighborhood, drop by, say hello, drop off their favorite snacks just to see them smile or give them a hug. Because the peace that you're looking for in the middle of all this uncertainty is not going to come from the next article or the next podcast or the next headline. It comes from real people, real community, and a faith that is bigger than the current news cycle. The ground is unstable. It always has been, just for different reasons and different seasons. And the ones who didn't just survive, but thrived, were the ones that went with the current deliberately, not against it. They didn't wait for the flood to carry them off. That's who you are, the one taking deliberate and early action. That's who I'm doing all of this for. So barbarians, remember, hold the line. Don't compromise the truth and run your race like you mean it. I'll see you next time.